Good afternoon from southern Sweden. Along the trail, I found this interesting spot. I came into this area. It's quite hilly. It's a mixed forest, a lot of nice mature red pine, but some spruce and birch, of course, like everywhere else in Sweden. And there's just this network, this maze of trails that's kind of beguiling, and you can get lost in here, I think. Or you could. And anyway, I thought of something different I wanted to do. I wanted to bring in a different poet. I think one of the best of the 20th century. His name is Thom Gunn, spelled Thom and then Gunn. He's originally from the UK, from Kent, from a town called Gravesend. And he studied at Cambridge and met his life partner, who was from California, or at least they moved to California together. And so he left, I think he was born in like 1929, and then he left for San Francisco in like 1957 and settled down there for the rest of his life when he died of a drug overdose in 2004. Thom Gunn was remarkable in that he used classic forms. I mean, he eventually drifted more towards free verse, but he liked seeing where his wildness and creativity and bohemian sense could brush up against these classic forms like the terza rima from Dante, or Shakespearean sonnets, couplets, other classic verse forms. But he was a bohemian. I of course never met him, but one of my teachers, who's a very, very good poet, met him and actually wrote a poem about Thom Gunn. And he said what everyone else seems to say, is that if you met this guy, Thom Gunn, in any context, you would never guess that he was a celebrated writer, considered one of the best poets of the 20th century. He was spontaneous, goofy, loved to play practical jokes. He knew all the seedy spots in San Francisco. He was into all kinds of different scenes, big into the biker scene for a while. But he had this like playful spirit. And they all say that if you didn't know he was a poet, that's the last thing you would ever guess. But he was extraordinarily good. And so with that, I was going to read a different one. It was like, how good he is, because I got all these different ideas about which one, because I thought, I'm definitely going to read this one. But then I was like, no, I've got to read that one. This is one of the most perfect poems written in the 20th century, and it's called My Sad Captains. And My Sad Captains is a reference from Shakespeare, Antonio and Cleopatra. Let's have one other gaudy night. Call to me, all my sad captains. Fill our bowls once more. Let's mock the midnight bell. That was Shakespeare. Not one of his best lines, that's for sure. But My Sad Captains is a cool title for a 20th century poem. 3 stanzas. Doesn't really need a lot of explication, I don't think. But he is talking about this contrast between the passions and an enduring presence, solace and inspiration, and the fleetingness of anything good in life. But he's celebrating some of his dear friends and acknowledging the passage of time, and that this imprint that other people can have on us. Another poet, a much lesser poet than Thom Gunn, said that there is the hidden presence of others in us, even if we've only known them briefly, which kind of relates to this, but kind of not. But I'll just read it. My sad captains. One by one they appear in the darkness, a few friends, and a few with historical names. How late they start to shine. But before they fade, they stand perfectly embodied, all the past lapping them like a cloak of chaos. They were men who, I thought, lived only to renew the wasteful force they spent with each hot convulsion. They remind me, distant now. True, they're not at rest yet, but now they are indeed apart, winnowed from failures. They withdraw to an orbit and turn with disinterested, hard energy, like the stars. Yeah, he really stuck the landing on that one. And I'm not going to make any other comments on that. I think that's just an astonishing poem that holds up in any context and probably in any kind of translation. And so I'm going to go from that one, and we're going to do something that shows he's still using form in this one. He's using couplets, but he's being a little bit more free and fun and playful with the form. And this one does need more explanation to it. It's called Moly, M-O-L-Y, and it's referring, of course, to Odysseus, to Homer's Odyssey, and it's told through the point of view of, or the speaker is, one of the sailors on one of Odysseus's sailors, having been transformed into a beast by Circe. Circe, or as it's often said in English, Circe, C-I-R-C-E, but the original Greek was Kirkos, from Kirkos, like I believe was the word for hawk or falcon. And so he's telling the story, but it's also, the playfulness comes because he's also describing kind of like that post-LSD experience, like after the trip, like that feeling of enormous calmness and unity after you've after that, where you kind of are removing all the psychological blocks. I'm not speaking from any kind of personal experience, of course, but that's what I'm led to believe he's talking about. He's linking Odysseus, classical forms, playing with classical verse forms, but also really, in some cases, being very, very free verse, and then going back and forth. And it's really a deeply psychological poem, but it's also can be read at a very, very fun level. The last poem was more high-toned and serious, but this is a little bit more fun. So it's nightmare of beasthood, snorting. How to wake. I woke, what beasthood skin she made me take. Leathery toad that ruts for days on end, or crying, cringing, dribbling dog, man's servile friend. Or cat that prettily pounces on its meat, tortures it hours, then does not care to eat. Parrot, moth, shark, wolf, crocodile, ass, flea. What germs, what jostling mobs there were in me. These seem like bristles, and the hide is tough. No claw or web here, each foot ends in hoof. Into what bulk has method disappeared? Like ham, streaked, I am gross, gray, gross, flap-eared. My pale-lashed eyes, my only human feature, my teeth tear. I am the snouted creature that bites through anything, root, wire, or can, If I was not afraid, I'd eat a man. A man's flesh already is in mine, hand and foot, poised for risk, buried in swine. I root and root. You think that it is greed. It is, but I seek out a plant I need. Direct me, gods, whose changes are all holy, to where it flickers deep in grass, the moly. Cool flesh of magic in each leaf and shoot, from milky flower to the black forked root. From this fat dungeon I could rise to skin and human life, putting pig within. I push my big gray wet snout through the green, dreaming the flower I have never seen. So that's one. That's also one for the books. When you realize how much he's condensed in there and how much the form highlights both the history, the myth, and then the immediate experience that he's describing, like from the point of view of someone who has just gone through an intense experience, psychedelic experience. It really enters into a different space, and several people who knew him said that he's the only one who could write such a beautiful poem on LSD. With some, historic weight and metric precision. Although this one is like, it's, as I said before, it like certain lines, like you feel like, he's just using the words just to fit into this rhythm. And then in another one, he kind of drifts off and doesn't care about trying to fit a specific form. So it's really quite an energetic, fun, philosophical poem. And that's the other remarkable thing about him, is like, if you read his biography or you talk to people who knew him, you might think that he would be given to flights of fancy and things like that, but he was always grounded by respect for the form and the history. And if you read, like, especially his selected poems, a lot of which are really not that great, nowhere near the two that I read, but there's a very specific point of view and philosophical rigor in everything that he writes. And he also takes you to places that you wouldn't have gone otherwise. And he also, obviously liked to overstep. And I think some other poet said that only by overstepping do you obey. There's always this duality. Anyway, those are just some random thoughts. Lovely poems. I think you should look up some of the. He wrote quite a number of gorgeous poems, and there was actually two others that I was thinking about reading, but I decided to do my Sad Captains and Moly, just in case, maybe some people have never read Thom Gunn or heard about him, but if I can introduce him to more people, then I've done some good along the trail. And we will wish you a good day and talk to you soon. Bye.